Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Sun Life Prosperity Fund's Annual Stockholders Meeting. The following are present in this afternoon's meeting: the Chairman of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds, Mr. Benedicto Sison; the Directors of the Funds, Ms. Valerie Pama; Attorney Oscar Orbos; Attorney Aleli Angela Quirino; Mr. Oscar Reyes; Dr. Shelito Habito; and the Fund's President and Director, Ms. Maria Josefina Castillo. Also joining us in the Zoom conference are the board officers of the funds, namely Chief Investments Officer Mr. Michael Gerard Enriquez and Treasurer Ms. Candy Esteban. We shall now commence with the annual stockholders meeting proper. To lead this meeting, please welcome the Chairman of the funds, Mr. Benedict Sison, together with the Corporate Secretary, Attorney Ana Katrina Cabicting Ibero, and Assistant Corporate Secretary, Attorney Winlove Apple Sandalo Esperanza.
Good afternoon to our fellow directors of the various Prosperity Fund boards, to our board officers, and to our valued stockholders. Welcome to the joint annual stockholders meeting of the following Sun Life Prosperity Funds: Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Bond Fund, Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Balance Fund, Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Philippine Equity Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Advantage Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Abundance Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Dynamic Fund, Sun Life Prosperity GS Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund, formerly known as the Sun Life Prosperity Money Market Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Stock Index Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Wellspring Fund, Sun Life Prosperity World Voyager Fund, and Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Starter Fund. May we now call on our Corporate Secretary, Attorney Kate Ibero, to confirm whether we have a quorum.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we proceed with the declaration on proof of notice of meeting, we would like to confirm that the holding of this virtual stockholders meeting is in accordance with the requirements set forth by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The necessary approvals from the Board of Directors have been obtained and all requirements have been complied with in order to protect the interests of the stockholders. Notices of the meeting were sent to all stockholders of record as of April 30, 2020. The notices were sent electronically, posted on the Slamci website, and likewise published in newspapers of general circulation as follows. For the bond fund, to 5,574 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the balanced fund, to 24,361 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Dollar Advantage Fund, to 908 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Dollar Abundance Fund, to 439 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Dynamic Fund, to 1,054 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the GS Fund, to 177 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Peso Starter Fund, to 22,864 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Philippine Equity Fund, to 27,772 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Philippine Stock Index Fund, to 7,913 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the Dollar Wellspring Fund, to 162 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. For the World Voyager Fund, to 287 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. And lastly, for the Dollar Starter Fund, to 105 stockholders, representing 100% of the stockholders entitled to vote at this meeting. These notices were recorded as duly received. The Sun Life Prosperity Funds require a 10% quorum in Section 4, Article 1 of their respective bylaws to hold their annual stockholders meeting. Based on the attendance sheet, as well as the proxies received before the meeting, each fund has met the 10% quorum requirement with the following details. For the Bond Fund, 1,040,575,167 shares, representing 64.31% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Balance Fund, 877,267,847 shares, representing 35.87% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Philippine Equity Fund, 615,352,636 shares, representing 28.45% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Dollar Advantage Fund, 2,004,024 shares, representing 25.34% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Dollar Abundance Fund, 1,193,302 shares, representing 25.66% of the voting stock of the corporation. For Dynamic Fund, that's 711,639,490 shares, representing 46.83% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the GS Fund, that's 70,560,224 shares, representing 43.06% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Peso Starter Fund, 17,782,923,867 shares, representing 88.93% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Philippine Stock Index Fund, 1,744,186,454 shares, representing 52.34% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the Dollar Wellspring Fund, 3,310,418 shares, representing 54.97% of the voting stock of the corporation. For the World Voyager Fund, to 1,597,361 shares, representing 26.63% of the voting stock of the corporation. And lastly, for the Dollar Starter Fund, to 2,676,099 shares, representing 44.80% of the voting stock of the corporation. Mr. Chairman, we can proceed with the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Kate. As this is the first time that the Sun Life Prosperity Fund's annual stockholders meeting is being conducted virtually, we prepared a pre-recorded chairman's message. Please watch this.
Good afternoon, Sun Life investors. This virtual shareholders meeting is a first for us at Sun Life Asset Management. It would have been wonderful to be with you in person, but your safety is our priority as our country continues to battle a health crisis. What's important is that we're able to share with you the latest about the Sun Life Prosperity Funds and how we are ensuring a delightful experience for you, even amid the current situation. Let me begin by sharing the highlights of the previous year. 2019 was marked with significant milestones. We launched the Philippines' first ever target-dated mutual funds known as the Sun Life Prosperity Achievers Funds. Also, we introduced a more affordable denomination of the Sun Life Prosperity Card at only 1,000 pesos. Both these offerings aim to encourage more Filipinos to invest so they may grow their money and get closer to their financial goals. Meanwhile, our digital enhancements also continue. On the one hand, we launched Slamci Online, a platform where one can easily open an account without having to visit a client service center. On the other hand, the bills payment facility enabled investors to add to their accounts through their bank's mobile or online payment channel. Also, we made our workplace savings plan called Sunrise more accessible via its own portal, where company representatives can administer the program while members can view and manage the contributions to their investments. These digital enhancements proved to be useful, especially when the quarantine measures were implemented early this year. As the country went on lockdown, we were still able to serve our investors' needs and provide much needed information and advice through various digital tools. In fact, as of end June, we breached the mark of 94 billion pesos assets under management. This matters to us, for it serves as a barometer of our clients' continued trust in us, as well as an indicator of the quality of service we're able to offer, even in these extraordinary times. We hope that through our efforts to connect with you and serve you amid the crisis, we were able to bring you clarity and confidence in your investments. Moreover, we hope that this reassures you that Sun Life Asset Management is committed to being your lifetime partner in your financial journey. We have always held in high regard the partnership we have with you. It is your trust and support that has pushed us to innovate, improve, and excel over the years. In turn, it has also led to various recognitions within the industry. During last year's Philippine Investment Funds Association Awards, we were bestowed 12 awards for fund performance. We even garnered the most honors for the Balanced Fund and the Money Market Fund categories. But most of all, our bright partnership with you has led to a significant milestone, our 20th anniversary. It has been 2 decades since we went on a mission to champion financial literacy, to grow the number of Filipino investors, and to help our clients pursue prosperity. Today, we are the largest non-bank asset management company in the Philippines. We are managing 16 funds with the launch of Sun Life World Equity Index Feeder Fund. We are serving the various needs of more than 160,000 investors with the help of 2,500 financial advisors. It has been a memorable 2 decades for us at Sun Life Asset Management. This milestone is made even more special by the fact that we are also marking the 125th anniversary of our mother company, Sun Life Philippines. Through the years, we have been with the Filipinos as they celebrated victories and faced adversities. We've seen their courage and strength and have been with them as they rose above every challenge. This pandemic has been no different. As the country faced this COVID-19 pandemic, Sun Life immediately responded by providing medical supplies and protective equipment to hospitals, offering free life insurance coverage to medical frontliners, donating food and basic necessities to vulnerable families, and more. This is our way of giving back to the country that has been our home for 125 years now, and also our way of honoring and reiterating our commitment to Filipinos. Ladies and gentlemen, we have faith that our country will overcome this challenge. So confident are we about this that we are already putting in place a plan to help Filipinos rise to a brighter new world. We are developing tools, products, and programs that would enable them to bounce back with conviction and soar even higher. After all, this is our promise as the Filipinos' lifetime partner to a brighter future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the honor of serving you. We look forward to more decades of a brighter partnership with you. Have a pleasant afternoon with your Sun Life family, and thank you for joining us today.
The next item on the agenda is a review of our 2019 operations. I now turn you over to our treasurer, Ms. Candy Esteban. Candy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to all our shareholders joining us in this afternoon's stockholders meeting. Please note that all the information I am about to present is contained in the respective 20-IS that has been distributed to you. You may also access the link shared in the email invitation to this afternoon's meeting. Let me present to you the full year financial results of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds. As Sun Life Management Company is celebrating its 20th year this year, we are pleased to share with you that Slamci ended 2019 with total assets under management of 79.51 billion, up from 55.75 billion year-on-year. While most asset management companies also posted healthy year-on-year growth, Slamci outpaced the mutual fund industry with a 42.63% year-on-year expansion, coming from strong interest in our liquidity funds amid declining interest rates. Do note that the overall mutual fund industry had a year-on-year growth of 10.9%. The 5-year cumulative annual growth rate of our AUM is at 9.43%, again, a growth rate faster than the 5-year growth of the market at 3.67%. Slamci continues to be the second largest mutual fund company in the market, with our market share growing to 27.98% by the end of 2019. Moving on to our next slide, our peso funds continue to take up a lion's share of our AUM, with a total AUM size of 73.1 billion pesos, making up 93% of our total AUM. The Peso Money Market Fund, now called Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund, grew by 141% as we saw investors flock to safer instruments. The Peso Starter Fund delivers consistent returns and provides for the liquidity needs of our investors. The next two fastest growing peso funds in terms of AUM are the Index Fund and the Bond Fund, which grew at 20% and at 6% respectively. We saw declines in our AUM for two of our pioneer funds, the Balanced and the Equity Funds, as long-time investors opted to lock in their gains and switch to our other peso funds. The next slide shows the AUMs of our Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Funds. Overall, our dollar funds comprise 7% of our total portfolio, amounting to 5.4 billion pesos. Similar to the peso portfolio, our fastest growing dollar fund is the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Starter Fund, which provides liquidity and steady returns to our investors. This was launched in 2018 and has since grown to more than 2 billion pesos. The rest of our dollar funds also grew significantly year-on-year, except for the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Advantage Fund. The Dollar Advantage Fund was one of our first dollar products and have been in the market since 2002. Similar to our balanced and equity funds, in 2019, long-time investors of the fund also opted to lock in their gains and switch to our other dollar funds. Our next two slides will highlight the net asset values per share of our various funds. We are happy to share with you that in 2019, all of our funds posted positive gains year-on-year. Our funds, from our stable liquidity and fixed income funds to the more aggressive equity funds, all posted positive net gains last year. You can see the respective growth rates of each fund on your screen. On the dollar fund side, All of our funds, except for the short-term liquidity fund, Dollar Starter Fund, posted double-digit returns in 2019. Our Dollar Starter Fund, on the other hand, posted a full-year return of 2.2%, significantly higher than your dollar CASA rate in the market of below 0.5%. Moving on to the top grossing funds in terms of gross sales. As you saw in our strong AUM growth, we saw significant gross sales coming into our liquidity funds, the peso and dollar starter funds. For those two funds, we saw combined subscriptions of more than 120 billion pesos in 2019. For peso funds, we also saw strong subscriptions in the index and bond funds, while on the dollar fund side, our two equity funds posted strong subscription levels, the Dollar Advantage and Dollar Wellspring funds. In terms of number of accounts, our total number of accounts continued to grow year on year. It grew 13% to end at more than 158,000 accounts by the end of 2019. The three funds which had the highest accounts growth were the Peso Starter Fund, the Index Fund, and the Equity Fund. Before I close, I'd like to highlight that Slamci ended with more than 94 billion in AUM as of the end of June 2020, as our chairman also noted in his speech, achieving all-time highs in terms of AUM as we celebrate 20 years in the business. We continue to be the largest non-bank affiliated asset management company in the Philippines. Our funds are available across a wide distribution network, including 2,500 licensed advisors, 10 bank partners, and 6 broker partners. This includes partners who are also accessible online and on other digital platforms. As we speak, we currently have a portfolio of 16 funds covering a wide array of investment and liquidity needs. At the start of 2019, we released the first unitized mutual funds in the market, the Achiever 2028, Achiever 2038, and Achiever 2048. Last week, we launched another unitized mutual fund called the World Equity Index Feeder Fund, anchored on the MSCI All-Country World Index. I hope you can stay for the rest of the meeting, as our investments team, led by our Chief Investment Officer, Mr. Michael Enriquez, will be sharing more details about the Sun Life Prosperity Funds later today. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Candy Esteban. The next item on the agenda is the Fund Performance Report for 2019. May I ask the Chief Investments Officer, Mr. Mike Enriquez, to give us the report on our 2019 fund performance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To ensure that the fund performance report is clearly presented without any internet connectivity disruptions, we prepared this pre-recorded video. Watch.
Resilience and recovery. These were the resounding themes of the year 2019. Amidst the mixed performance of the local and global markets, the Sun Life Prosperity Funds delivered superior returns for its investors. Several funds ended the year within the top 2 quartiles for 1-year, 3-year, and 5-year performance rankings. Peso Fixed Income Funds. 2019 saw a stellar performance from the fixed income funds. All these provided gains for the Sun Life Prosperity Bond Fund. The Sun Life Prosperity GS Fund. And the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund. Dollar Fixed Income Funds. The Dollar Fixed Income Funds likewise generated good returns despite certain challenges. The Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Starter Fund provided higher returns despite lower time deposit rates. The Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Abundance Fund also showed a favorable performance as global shocks made emerging markets like the Philippines more attractive. Peso-balanced and equity-laced funds. Philippine equities saw a gain in 2019 from normalizing inflation and increased domestic liquidity. Meanwhile, several factors affected market sentiment. Despite adversity, Sun Life Asset Management's equity-laced peso funds saw positive returns, including the Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Stock Index Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Equity Fund, Sun Life Prosperity Dynamic Fund, and the Sun Life Prosperity Balanced Fund. Dollar balanced and equity-laced funds. 2019 was a great year for global stocks as strong U.S. corporate earnings growth and the low interest rates maintained by various central banks propelled equities. These developments gave impressive returns for the Sun Life Prosperity World Voyager Fund. The Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Advantage Fund, and the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Wellspring Fund. This 2020, what do we foresee? With the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the earnings of companies, the Philippine stock market will encounter continuing challenges. On the brighter side, stocks will be cushioned by fiscal and monetary support. Meanwhile, good value can be expected in global markets as dips in global stocks present opportunities for long-term equity investing. As for the Bangko Sentral, it may be compelled to continue lowering the policy rate depending on future economic activity. Through all these, Sun Life Asset Management will adhere to its investment philosophy. We will strive to provide our clients with superior risk-adjusted returns over the long term. We will combine growth and value investing to seek out performance with a blend of top-down strategic views and bottom-up analysis. We will ensure consistent performance across all our funds with a methodical security selection process combined with a robust asset allocation framework. All for your brighter financial journey, our dear investor. After all, we are Sun Life Asset Management, your lifetime partner in your pursuit of prosperity.
A market outlook forum will be held immediately after the annual meeting. So we will anticipate later more detailed discussion with you on our performance and our outlook for the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mike Enriquez. We now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the election of the members of the Board of Directors for the 2020-2021 term. I now turn you over to Attorney Kate Ibero so she could explain our voting procedure and introduce the nominees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both the voting procedure and the resumes of our nominees for directors have been stated in the SEC Form 20-IS, and such form was sent to our stockholders of record. Attorney Grapes, can you please tell us the rules and procedures, please?
Gladly, Attorney Kate. May I direct your attention to the rules and procedures as displayed on the screen. Preliminary results of votes on proxies submitted and validated as of 21 July 2020 shall be provided during the meeting. The final results shall be reflected in the minutes of the meeting. Stockholders who registered in this meeting or notified the corporate secretary via email of their intention to participate in this meeting through remote communication may email their questions, comments, clarifications, and suggestions to sunlifefunds@sunlife.com. Throughout the duration of the meeting, investors may submit their questions using the Q&A button on your screen. Lastly, eligible stockholders may cast their votes through the poll function of the Zoom. Investors will be given ample time to cast their votes.
Thank you, Attorney Grapes. We will now flash the pictures and names of our nominees on the screen. Our nominees are Mr. Benedicto C. Season for the Peso Starter Fund, GS Fund, Bond Fund, Balanced Fund, Dynamic Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Starter Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, World Voyager Fund. Ms. Maria Josefina A. Castillo for the Peso Starter Fund, GS Fund, Bond Fund, Balance Fund, Dynamic Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Starter Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, and the World Voyager Fund. Ms. Valerie N. Pama for the Peso Starter Fund. Attorney Oscar M. Orbos as Independent Director of the Peso Starter Fund, Bond Fund, Dynamic Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Starter Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, and the World Voyager Fund. Attorney Aleli Angela G. Quirino as Independent Director of the Peso Starter Fund, GS Fund, Bond Fund, Balance Fund, Dynamic Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Dollar Starter Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, and the World Voyager Fund. Mr. Oscar S. Reyes as Independent Director of the Peso Starter Fund, GS Fund, Bond Fund, Balance Fund, Dynamic Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, and the Dollar Advantage Fund. And lastly, Dr. Shelito F. Habito as Independent Director of the GS Fund, Balance Fund, Philippine Stock Index Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, Dollar Starter Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Dollar Wellspring Fund, and the World Voyager Fund. Kindly prepare to vote. A pop-out window will appear on your screen, providing you the nominees to be elected. You can now start by clicking in favor of your nominees, then submit. Please be reminded that we have 5 nominees for each fund, except for the Peso Starter Fund, where we have 6 nominees. Mr. Chairman, it appears we cannot push through with the election of the directors for certain funds as majority of their respective outstanding capital stock was not obtained. Attorney Grapes, please provide us with the results.
Sure, Attorney Kate. On the screen, the following funds did not meet the required number of votes. Balance Fund, 35.87%. Philippine Equity Fund, 28.45%. Dollar Advantage Fund, 25.34%. Dollar Abundance Fund, 25.66%. Dynamic Fund, 46.83%. GS Fund 43.06%, World Voyager Fund 26.63%, and lastly, Dollar Starter Fund 44.80%.
Thank you, Attorney Graves. So, Attorney Kate, what do you propose that we do?
I propose that we continue to solicit proxies until we get the required 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. We will also set the continuation meeting on September 18, that's a Friday, at 11 a.m. via Zoom. Those who have attended today's meeting and have cast their votes shall no longer be required to attend said continuation meeting. In the meantime, the present board of directors for the funds will continue to serve as such until their successors are elected and duly qualified.
All right. Since we lack the necessary majority of the outstanding capital stock to elect our directors for the boards of the funds mentioned by the corporate secretary, the present board of directors will continue to serve as such until their successors are elected and duly qualified. I urge management to exert all efforts to solicit proxies. Are there companies that have met the 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock in attendance and which can elect a new set of directors?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Attorney Graves, kindly provide us with the voting results.
The following funds met the required number of votes. Bond Fund 64.31%, Peso Starter Fund 88.93%, Philippine Stock Index Fund 52.34%, then the Dollar Wellspring Fund 54.97%.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Graves. For that matter, Attorney Kate, do we have a resolution to make the election of the Board of Directors for the said funds official?
Yes, sir. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 1-2020, which reads, Resolved that the following directors have been unanimously elected by the stockholders at this meeting to serve as directors of the funds for the 2020-2021 term. For Sun Life of Canada Prosperity Bond Fund, that would be Mr. Benedicto C. Sison, Ms. Maria Josefina A. Castillo, Mr. Oscar M. Orbos, Attorney Oscar M. Orbos, Mr. Oscar S. Reyes, and Attorney Aleli Angela G. Quirino. For the Sun Life Prosperity Philippine Stock Index Fund, that would be Mr. Benedicto C. Sison, Ms. Maria Josefina A. Castillo, Attorney Aleli Angela G. Quirino, Attorney Oscar M. Orbos, and Dr. Shalito F. Habito. For the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund, Mr. Benedicto C. Sison, Ms. Maria Josefina A. Castillo, Ms. Valerie N. Pama, Attorney Oscar M. Orbos, Mr. Oscar S. Reyes, and Attorney Aleli Angela G. Quirino. And lastly, for the Sun Life Prosperity Dollar Wellspring Fund, we have Mr. Benedicto C. Sison, Ms. Maria Josefina A. Castillo, Attorney Aleli Angela G. Quirino, Attorney Oscar M. Orbos, and Dr. Shalito F. Habito.
Thank you, Attorney Kate. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the stockholders' previous meeting in 2019. Attorney Kate, let us proceed with the voting.
To our dear stockholders, you will see the pop-out window on your screen regarding the approval of the minutes. Please click yes or no, then submit. Mr. Chair, we have gathered sufficient votes for all the funds to approve this item. Attorney Graves, kindly provide us with the voting results, please.
This item requires the approval of a majority of the quorum of the voting stock of the funds. All the funds met the required number of votes. Bond Fund 100%, Balance Fund 100%, Philippine Equity Fund 100%, Dollar Advantage Fund 100%, Dollar Abundance Fund 100%, Dynamic Fund 100%, GS Fund 100%, Peso Starter Fund 100%, Philippine Stock Index Fund 100%, Dollar Wellspring Fund 100%, World Voyager Fund 100%, lastly, Dollar Starter Fund 100%.
Thank you, Attorney Kate and Attorney Grapes. Do we have a resolution to approve the minutes of the 2019 stockholders meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 2-2020, which reads, Resolved to approve the minutes of the 2019 stockholders meeting held on July 17, 2019 at the Marquee Events Place in Bonifacio Global City, Taguig City, Philippines.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation and the ratification of all acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and officers of the previous year. Attorney Kate, may we proceed with the voting?
Gladly, Mr. Chair. Stockholders, a pop-out window will now appear on your screen for the item on confirmation and ratification of acts. Kindly click yes or no, then submit. Mr. Chair, we have gathered sufficient votes from all of the funds to approve the item. Attorney Grapes, please provide us with the results.
This item requires the approval of a majority of the quorum of the voting stock of the funds. All the funds met the required number of votes. Bond Fund 100%, Balance Fund 100%, Philippine Equity Fund 100%, Dollar Advantage Fund 100%, Dollar Abundance Fund 100%, Dynamic Fund 100%, GS Fund 100%, Peso Starter Fund 100%, Philippine Stock Index Fund 100%, Dollar Wellspring Fund 100%, World Voyager Fund 100%, and Dollar Starter Fund 100%.
Okay, do we have a resolution to approve the confirmation and ratification of all acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and officers of the previous year?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution Number 3-2020, which reads, Resolved to approve, confirm, and ratify all acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and officers of the previous year.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the appointment of the external auditor. May we hear from our treasurer, Ms. Candy Esteban, on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the endorsement of the Audit and Compliance Committees, With the endorsement of the Audit and Compliance Committees of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds, we would like to recommend to the stockholders the reappointment of Navarro Ampere and Associates, Deloitte Touche and Tomatsu as our external auditor.
Okay, Attorney Kate, may we proceed with the voting?
My pleasure, Mr. Chair. For the approval of the external auditor, Navarro Ampere and Associates, Deloitte Touche Tomatsu, please direct your attention to the poll on your screen. Click yes or no, then submit. Mr. Chair, we have gathered sufficient votes from all the funds to approve this item. Attorney Grapes, the results, please.
This item requires the approval of a majority of the quorum of the voting stock of the funds. All the funds met the required number of votes. Bond Fund 100%, Balance Fund 100%, Philippine Equity Fund 100%, Dollar Advantage Fund 100%, Dollar Abundance Fund 100%, Dynamic Fund 100%, GS Fund 100%, Peso Starter Fund 100%, Philippine Stock Index Fund 100%, Dollar Wellspring Fund 100%, World Voyager Fund 100%, Dollar Starter Fund 100%.
Thank you, Attorney Graves. Attorney Kate, do we have a resolution to approve the reappointment of Navarro, Ampere and Associates, Deloitte, Touche and Tomatsu as external auditor for 2020?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have Sun Life Prosperity Fund's ASHM Resolution number 4-2020, which reads, Resolved to approve the reappointment of Navarro, Ampere and Associates, Deloitte Touche Tomatsu as external auditor for the year 2020.
Okay. As to the other matters on the agenda, Attorney Kate, I understand we have 4 items for approval. Kindly provide us the details of the first item.
Mr. Chair, the first item on the other matters agenda requires approval of at least 2/3 or 67% of the outstanding capital stock for the following funds. For the Balance Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, Dollar Advantage Fund, Philippine Equity Fund, GS Fund, Dynamic Fund, Stock Index Fund, and the World Voyager Fund, it is for the amendment of Article 6 of the Articles of Incorporation to increase the number of directors to 6.
Let us go ahead and proceed with the voting, Attorney Kate.
May I invite the stockholders to now cast their votes. The poll is now on your screen. You will see the item on amendment of Article 6 of the Articles of Incorporation. Please click your answer and submit.
Attorney Kate, let us now proceed with the second item.
Mr. Chair, the second item on the agenda requires the approval of at least 2/3 or 67% of the outstanding capital stock, which is for the Balance Fund, Dollar Abundance Fund, and Philippine Equity Fund, for the amendment of Article 3 of the Articles of Incorporation to indicate the principal office address as Sun Life Center, Bonifacio Global City, Taguig City.
Let us proceed with the voting, Attorney Kate.
May I invite the stockholders to now cast their vote. On your screen, you will see the item on amendment of Article 3 of Articles of Incorporation. Kindly click your answer and submit.
Attorney Kate, let us now proceed with the third item.
Mr. Chair, the third item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. That is, for the Balance Fund, it is for the amendment of Section 1, Article 1 of the bylaws in relation to the date and time of stockholders' meeting.
Let us proceed with the voting, Attorney Kate.
May I invite the stockholders to now cast their vote. On your screen, you will see the third item on the amendment of Section 1, Article 1 of the bylaws. Kindly click your answer and submit.
Attorney Kate, let us now proceed with the fourth item.
Mr. Chair, the fourth item requires the approval of at least 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock. That is, for the balance fund, it's for the delegation of the power to amend Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 of the bylaws to the Board of Directors.
Let's go ahead and proceed with the voting, Attorney Kate.
May I invite the stockholders to now cast their votes. On your screen, you will see the item on the delegation of power to amend certain articles of the bylaws of the balance fund. Kindly click your answer and submit.
Attorney Kate, do we have the necessary numbers to have these approved?
Mr. Chairman, it appears that we cannot push through with the approval of the amendments of the Articles of Incorporation of the aforementioned funds, as the required 2/3 or 67% vote of the outstanding capital stock was not obtained. For the balance fund, it's only 35.87%. For the Philippine Equity Fund, it's 28.45%. For the Dollar Advantage Fund, it's 25.34%. For the Dollar Abundance Fund, it's 25.66%. For the Dynamic Fund, it's 46.83%. For the GS Fund, it's 43.06%. For the Philippine Stock Index Fund, it's 52.34%. And for the World Voyager Fund, it's only 26.63%. We were likewise unable to reach the required 50% plus 1 of the outstanding capital stock for the approval of the amendment of the bylaws of the balance fund. For item number 3, we have only obtained 35.87% of the balance fund. And for item number 4, it's only 34.65%.
So, Attorney Kate, what do you propose that we do?
Mr. Chair, I propose that we continue to solicit proxies such that we get the required 2/3 vote and the 50% plus 1 votes for the outstanding capital stock. We will set the continuation meeting on September 18, 2020. That is a Friday at 11 a.m. and the same will be held via Zoom. Again, those who have attended today's meeting and cast their vote shall no longer be required to attend the continuation meeting.
All right. Since we lack the necessary number of votes from the outstanding capital stock to have the proposal approved, we will resubmit this matter to the stockholders during their continuation meeting on 18 September 2020. I urge management to exert all efforts to solicit proxies. So let us now open the floor to entertain questions from the stockholders. Mr. Moy Onya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have gathered the questions from our stockholders, and I have with me here the 4 most asked questions. Question number 1 goes, how did the pandemic affect your business operations? How is the company servicing its clients' needs during the pandemic? May we invite our chairman, Mr. Sison, to answer this one?
Thank you, Mr. Onya. You see, the health and the welfare of our employees and of our advisors remain to be our top priority. Through technology, we have empowered our workforce to remain productive while working from home. Also, our advisors are enabled to hold online consultations with clients and assist them in availing products through our digitally enabled selling process. And for Slamci, many of our transactions have long been available in our digital platforms, and we make sure that we constantly enhance our digital capabilities. Ms. Pama, as president of our Slamci, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, from the onset of the pandemic to the present, Slamci has been ensuring that clients have all the support they need in these unusual times. We encourage transactions through our digital platforms to ensure that they can manage and access their investments safely and conveniently from their homes. We've hosted regular market updates via Zoom or webinars to provide our clients with guidance and information so they can stay on track in their investment journey. And recently, with the relaxation of quarantine measures in certain areas, we have been able to increase accessibility to our clients by reopening select client service centers where safety measures are strictly observed. Mr. Enriquez, Mike, would you like to add anything with regards to the management of our funds?
Yes, thank you, Rina. I'd just like to assure all our shareholders and clients that we have been effectively managing the funds since the start of the lockdown. We have full off-site trading capabilities. So rest assured that there has been no degradation of how we manage the funds. And we have been doing so since 4 months from now.
Thank you everyone for your answers. It seems that the COVID-19 pandemic appears to be a common concern among our investors, as the next set of questions shows. So the next question is, how will the prolonged lockdown impact the financial performance of the company? How is your liquidity and balance sheet? Can it withstand a prolonged lockdown? May I invite the treasurer of Slamci and the funds to answer these questions.
Thank you, Moy. Thank you for that question, Moy. Slamci, as the fund manager and the distributor of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds, has always been well managed. The Sun Life Prosperity Funds and the Sun Life Philippines and all its affiliates continue to maintain a healthy balance sheet coming from years of prudent management of resources. We also see very strong cash flow still coming in into our funds, as I mentioned earlier in my report. Do note that we continue to see the trust of our investors despite the pandemic. Our assets under management, as we mentioned earlier, continue to grow, actually on a month-on-month basis, and we grew to a record high of 94 billion at the end of June, and we still see positive tractions in July. We can confidently reassure investors that Sun Life Philippines, Sun Life Asset Management Company, and all the Sun Life Prosperity Funds are definitely here to stay.
Thank you, Mrs. Esteban, for that reassurance. The next question is related to a specific product, and the question is the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund Inc. a new fund managed by Slamci?
Moy, may I answer that question? Actually, the Sun Life Prosperity Money Market Fund Incorporated has been renamed to the Sun Life Prosperity Peso Starter Fund Incorporated. This was approved by at least a majority of the board of directors last July 18 in 2017, and at least 2/3 of the shareholders last November 17, also in 2017. And really, it's to be more descriptive of what the fund is, as we want to invite more investors to start investing in any of our funds. We believe the money market fund is a good way to start, hence Peso Starter Fund. And so the fund's investment objective remains the same, which is to provide potentially higher returns than traditional bank deposit products. And similarly, the fund still caters to investors who are looking for relatively safe and stable investments where they can park their money and earn modest returns.
Thank you for that, Ms. Pama. Our last question, which I'm sure all investors would be eager to know the answer to, is this. What is your investment advice given the current market volatilities?
Why, maybe I can take that question. Well, given the heightened volatility that we have been experiencing because of this pandemic, I think it's a good time for us to pause and reassess our positions in the market and how it matches the current risk profile. Does it still match our risk profile given all the volatility that we have experienced? So I think if the cash flow that you have isn't affected by the crisis. So I think the only thing to go back is to your goals and remember that you have to stick to your investment plans. And I think regular investment eases volatility. So regular contributions on your investment plan would definitely help in this type of volatility. And of course, at the end of the day, it's really how consistent you are to achieving your goal by your investment exercise.
Thank you, Mr. Mike Enriquez. And of course, thank you, Mr. Moy Onya. And of course, thank you to our stockholders for your questions. Although this ends our Q&A portion, we continue to invite our stockholders to email your questions, comments, clarifications, and suggestions to sunlifefunds@sunlife.com. Our team will respond to them accordingly. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Enriquez and his team will hold a Market Outlook Forum after we officially adjourn this annual stockholders meeting. We encourage all of you to participate in the said forum, especially those who wish to ask questions about Mr. Enriquez's video presentation earlier. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, do I hear a second? Any second?
Second.
Okay. Okay. So it has been moved and seconded. The meeting is now adjourned. And thank you very much to all of you for attending this joint annual stockholders meeting of the Sun Life Prosperity Funds. We hope to see all of you again next year. While the boards will hold their joint organizational meeting, we encourage you to stay for the Market Outlook Forum to be led by Mr. Mike Enriquez. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice day.